In the quiet rural town of Lamar, Arkansas, tucked among cotton fields and crumbling barns, stands a white colonial farmhouse that once promised a dream life for the Shea family. Instead, it delivered something else entirely, something cold, intelligent, and malevolent. For months in 2002 to 2003, this unsuspecting home became the stage for one of the most terrifying and well-documented hauntings in modern American history. A descent into chaos, violent manifestations, shadow figures, and so much more. This is the terrifying story of the Shea family haunting, also known as a haunting in Arkansas. And this is not a story you want to listen to alone or in the dark. A home is supposed to be a sanctuary, but what happens when it turns on you? The Ozark River Valley was once considered the gateway to the West. Perhaps more so now, it is a gateway to the great beyond, a place where life and death collide, and sometimes, just maybe, don't always stay separate from one another. In October of 2003, hard-working couple Ben and Jamie Shea searched for a new place to live. Originally from Little Rock, their search takes them to Markham, Arkansas. They're hoping to find a house that they can make a home for themselves, as well as their young children. As the couple drives to look at their next prospect purchase, they are taken back by what they see standing before them. There in front of their eyes lies a historical home. In Jamie's words from later interviews, the house was absolutely beautiful and large. It had old trees all around it, and it was just the picture of the house that I had been wanting all my life. The house the couple is looking at buying is indeed old. Built in the 1700s, it is one of the oldest in the state. Together, Ben and Jamie seem to collectively fall in love with it. They can already imagine raising their 3 children upon its grounds. Ben, who had grown up playing in the woods, truly wanted to share that with his children as well. The house was in the perfect location for the couple, directly in between 2 towns the two separately worked in. If they lived here, their commutes would be significantly reduced, and therefore, they could spend more time together as a family. Deciding to take a closer look, the Shays step inside the home. But as their feet cross the threshold, little do they know that something else is taking a closer look at them as well, perhaps from the protection of the shadows. Regardless, the couple loves what they see. In the words of Jamie Shea in later interviews, "I knew as soon as I saw that house that we had to have it. It seemed as if it spoke directly to their souls, almost as if something supernatural was drawing them in." Together, they continue to examine the rest of the home before fully committing to purchasing. But as they ascend the stairs and take a look inside the first room, they perhaps aren't quite as sure as they once were. Inside the bedroom lies something strange. There's a fireplace at its center, and on and within it are all sorts of strange markings and graffiti. A local boy named Clayton, who had passed away in an accident's name, was spray painted across the stone. Pentagrams were carved and painted on it, as well as the names the couple didn't seem to recognize. Names that appeared to be in a language that neither of them knew. But despite being creeped out at first, the two thought that perhaps some teens had broken into the property at some point during its vacancy and committed the defacing. So with that conclusion, they decide that the deal is too good to pass up. They decide to make an offer on the home, and to their surprise, it's accepted almost immediately. The couple are absolutely elated. The deal they got on the home seems to be too good to be true, and perhaps for one reason or another, it truly was. Within several weeks, the Shays, wife Jamie, husband Ben, and 3 young children, 8-month-old Jackson, 5-year-old Bridger, and 11-year-old daughter Tori, move into their colonial home to begin a new chapter in their lives. But little did they know that something else, something much more sinister, may just be beginning. The family quickly settles into a busy routine. They decide to hire an experienced and well-reviewed babysitter to watch Jackson during the day, a woman named Molly. Ben, who works 3rd shift, sleeps throughout the morning, then wakes up to attend class, and then heads to work after. One morning as he sleeps in his bed, shortly after hiring the sitter, he is suddenly woken up by the sound of his baby son screaming through the baby monitor he's placed beside his pillow on his nightstand. As he sleepily calls out to Molly to take care of Jackson, he is met with no response from her. Meanwhile, the screams of the child only continue to grow in intensity. Growing frustrated, Ben sits up to go and see just what exactly was going on. He continues to call out to Molly, but is met with no responses. As the infant screams erupt out of the baby monitor, Ben seeks out Molly within the house, but his calls are only continuing to be in vain. Molly is seemingly not around and is not answering him, yet his son's cries grow ever louder. As he makes his way into the nursery whilst carrying the monitor, the screams suddenly stop as he breaches the room's doorway. Then, a deep chill manifests down his spine. The room itself is empty. The crib is barren. There's not a single soul dwelling within the room. Something was very wrong here. Confused and a bit freaked out, but not one to be the superstitious type, Ben then heads downstairs and continues to call out for Molly to try and get to the bottom of whatever was going on. It's when he gets into the living room that he finds a note on the coffee table. The note reads, "I went shopping and took Jackson with me. We'll be back soon." In later interviews, Ben would say that, "I knew for a fact that I wasn't dreaming. There was a baby crying on that monitor, and yet there was nobody else home. It was a very creepy moment." Unsure of what to make of the whole event, he decides to keep things to himself. Several nights later, as Ben heads to work at the hospital, and a large harvest moon hangs high over the Shea residence, something not of this world seemed to be permeating the air within its walls. Bridger Shea is suddenly woken up out of a sound sleep by a chorus of strange voices emanating from nowhere, yet they seem to be everywhere. A cold gust of wind accompanies them, seemingly also with no origin. The young man is absolutely terrified as things are blown around his room. He gets up and begins running towards his parents' room. Jamie too is suddenly woken up, but by the fear-stricken pleas of her young son. Believing that perhaps he had just had a nightmare, she brings the scared boy into bed with her to console him. Trying to quell his fears, she gets up out of bed and decides to take a look around the house. Her first thought was that perhaps one of the other children had left the television on in the living room, but upon examining it, it was turned off. She listens for any other signs of activity, but doesn't hear anything. Tired, she returns to bed and attempts to get more sleep. The night, however, or what dwelled within it, seemingly had other plans. Tori Shea is woken up by the sound of toys being played with. Confused, she glances around her room as her clock reads 3 a.m. on the nearby nightstand. The sounds seem to be originating from her brother Bridger's room, just across the hallway from hers. Calling out to him, thinking that perhaps he had woken up and was entertaining himself, but at her expense, she tells him that he needs to go back to bed. As she opens the door to the young boy's room, she sees what appears to be practically any and all of his toys on the floor, and all of them are acting on their own accord and operating as if unseen hands are meddling with them. What strikes fear into her heart, however, is that her brother is nowhere to be seen. Stepping back into the hallway, she is met with a rush of cold wind and hears a chorus of voices that she doesn't recognize. It was as if multiple people with differing tonalities were speaking over one another, and the cacophony enveloped the atmosphere around her. Unsure and freaked out to say the least, she decides to run back to her bedroom. Shutting the door behind her, she runs to her bed and quickly hides underneath the covers. It takes her quite some time, but she eventually manages to fall back asleep. The following morning, as the children wait outside to head to school, they begin to talk among each other about the previous night's events. Tori, who perhaps was initially trying to rationalize what she had seen, had thought that Bridger had hid from her when she had come to confront him about playing in the middle of the night. When she asked the young boy why he hid and why he had been awake, he seems confused. He quickly tells her that he had slept with their mom and father and hadn't been in his room at all at that time. Further confused, Tori asks him just why he had gone to sleep in their mother's bed and hadn't stayed in his own. And with this question, the boy goes silent. Upon further prodding, he tells his sister that he had heard lots of scary voices and that it had got windy, so he ran. Being a good older sister, Tori decides not to further add to her brother's fear. She can tell that he genuinely meant what he was saying. She doesn't tell him that she too experienced the very same things he had just described during the night. Later that evening, before heading to work, Ben spends quality time with Bridger. The two lay in the boy's bed as Ben reads his son a children's book to relax him. For now, Ben is stuck working later hours while he earns his degree. He hopes that in due time, once the process is over, that he'll be able to adjust his hours so he can spend more time with his family. As he heads back out into the darkness of night to provide for them, something lurks within the shadows of the Shea household. As the children sleep, Jamie is busy crunching numbers and budgeting. As she clicks away on her calculator and jots down notes in a notebook, her concentration is abruptly broken by the sounds of children giggling. Considering the hour, she knows that her children should not be awake, let alone playing. So, she sets things down and decides to investigate. Glancing towards the stairs from the kitchen where she had been, she continues to hear her children giggle and laugh, and then also begins to hear loud thumping sounds as if they were running up and down the stairs in rapid succession. She calls out to them multiple times, yet is met with no response. Finally, deciding to get up and go scold her children for not only being up past their bedtime, but also for running around the house like gremlins, Jamie heads towards the stairs where the sounds are originating from. However, instead of coming face to face with ornery children, she's instead met with nothing but the now cold, dead silence of the house. The thumping, giggling, and horseplay sounds have seemingly ceased out of nowhere. Finding this unnerving to say the least, Jamie then quietly makes her way upstairs to check on them. She's very surprised, given what she had just heard, to find them all asleep in their beds. With a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach growing, the concerned mother decides to double-check the house for safety. All windows and doors are locked, and there are no other souls present within the house. This very creepy happening would be far from the last. In the coming days and headed into the following weekend, Jamie and the children have continued to experience strange activity in the home. Jamie decides that she can no longer keep the details to herself, and although she doesn't want to add anything further to her husband's already full plate at this point, she feels like she must talk to him about what's been taking place. Beginning to share the various occurrences, including one that had taken place that very day, their babysitter had heard crying on the baby monitor, and upon checking it, there was no child weeping. Ben looks up from his studying and freezes as he hears his wife's words. He then tells her that several weeks ago, he too had heard the cries of a child, and upon checking, discovered that his child and their babysitter weren't even physically in the house. And what puts a chill shivering down his spine is that he had kept the experience a secret from everyone. Almost as soon as the words leave his lips, the sound of banging starts to fill the stillness of the house. Thinking at first that it was their children, but quickly realizing that the sounds were coming from downstairs, Ben springs into action and begins heading towards where the sounds are coming from. The sounds themselves cease upon his approach. Then, to add to his suspicion, he goes and checks on the kids and finds each one sound asleep in their beds. As he descends the stairs and approaches his wife in the living room, he seems visibly stricken and confused. He seems to know that something deep down is wrong with the entire situation, but tries to take a rational approach. He starts trying to explain away the sounds as an old house settling. Whether this was a way to help calm his wife or himself is unclear. It at least works for Ben in the short term. He somewhat convinces himself that it was indeed the house settling and starts to head off for bed. Jamie, however, is feeling very differently about the situation. In later interviews, she would say, "It was at that moment that I truly began to feel like we might be living in a haunted house." The following morning, consumed by a newly found interest to discover just what she and her family might be dealing with, Jamie decides to visit the local library. While browsing the aisles, she accumulates a good amount of books on ghosts and hauntings. As she checks out at the front, the librarian who's assisting her can't help but notice just what she's interested in. She then tells Jamie that she herself grew up in a haunted house when she was younger. Jamie then asks the woman if the home was there in the local area or somewhere else. The woman, whom she had never met before, then tells her that it was indeed in her town. She then tells her the address. Jamie's eyes swell larger than the harvest moon when the words leave the woman's lips. It is the very same address that she and her family now live in. The woman then begins to fill Jamie in on the conclusions that she and her family had come to while living in the residence. They had believed that a young boy had accidentally fallen to his death from the second room in the middle of the upstairs section of the house, the room now that her son Bridger occupies. The drive home for Jamie is surreal. The following morning, as she waits for her husband to get home so she can tell him what she had been told regarding the house and their situation, she begins to worry just how living in such an environment could affect her children. Upon Ben's arrival, she begins to divulge to him just exactly what she had learned. Ben began to believe that perhaps, if this haunting was indeed real, that it would quiet down eventually and wouldn't have a large impact on their lives. As the Christmas season approaches, the paranormal activity within the Shea household seems to dwindle to a drop of its former self. One cold and snowy night, as Jamie researches on the family computer, she suddenly begins to feel as if she's being watched. Out of the glare of her monitor, she sees a dark, shadowy figure linger behind her. Startled, she turns around. Almost as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. Mortified, Jamie rushes out of the room and runs to the nearest phone to call Ben. As he picks up on the other line, he is hearing his wife be hysterical. Becoming frustrated because he can't simply leave work on a whim, Ben is saddened about the whole situation. In later interviews, Jamie would say this: "That was the first time I ever truly felt scared or threatened by whatever was in the house. It most certainly did not feel like the energy of a small child." The following day, Jamie would return to the library, seeking the woman that she had spoken to in regards to her current predicament and happening within the house. But as she glances around the library's front desk, she doesn't see her. She asks another librarian just where the woman was. She was then informed that she no longer worked for the library. Digging further as to what happened, Jamie is told that the woman left with no warning and no contact information and no forwarding address. Albeit it could have been a very unfortunate coincidence, the timing of it all just seems to add to the suspicion that something otherworldly was influencing the situation the family now found themselves in. Something dark. Over the next several weeks, the presence within the Shea home has seemingly continued to go dormant, yet the heaviness of its existence continued to plague Jamie. In another interview later on, she would say that, "I really had an eerie, sick feeling in my stomach. I really dreaded going home, and it was starting to not feel like my home anymore." One day, after picking up Tori from a friend's house, as she's driving through a construction zone, Jamie suddenly sees a flash before her eyes. Within the blink of an eye, she hits a pothole and crashes her vehicle. Upon coming to, she begins to panic. She sees that her daughter is pinned face down underneath the minivan. Emergency personnel rush Tori to the hospital after arrival on the scene. She's in critical condition. Ben soon arrives to greet his wife at the hospital, and the two weep and hold each other. The doctors believed that Tori had a broken back, but to what extent was yet to be seen. They were unsure if she would survive, and if she did survive, they weren't sure if she'd ever be able to walk again. In a miraculous turn of events, just 2 weeks after the accident, the hospital releases Tori just in time for Christmas. Although she will be bedridden for several months, she's expected to make a full recovery. Several more weeks pass, and with them the holidays. Jamie, who had taken a leave of absence from work to be able to care for her recovering daughter, barely notices any paranormal activity taking place in the house. As she gets Tori to bed one night, she's called to by her son. Standing at the bottom of the stairs, he tells his mother that people are talking in his room, and it's keeping him from sleeping. Jamie goes to check on baby Jackson. She soon finds him fast asleep in his crib, fortunately unaffected by the sounds or people talking. However, upon exiting his room, she makes her way towards Bridger's. As she gathers some stuffed toys for her son to sleep with that night, she can't shake the eerie feeling as if someone or something is watching her. As she makes her way back into her and Ben's bedroom, she tells Ben that she no longer feels safe within their home. The couple are torn, though, because they know that they can't go anywhere until Tori is fully recovered due to her condition. That, before anything, was their number one priority. They didn't want to have to focus on selling and then buying a home amidst her healing journey. After drifting off to dreamland, as a large amber moon hangs in the sky overhead, something sinister stirred within the walls of the Shea family home. Jamie is woken up to the strange sensation of her hair being pulled and toyed with. At first, thinking it was her husband, she asked him to please knock it off. Her words then wake Ben up, who has no idea what she's talking about. Then, as if invisible hands are grabbing it, she feels her hair being toyed with yet again, but this time, she's staring directly at her husband. She knows for a fact that it's not him. Then, all hell seems to break loose. The entire house begins to shake. Picture frames begin falling off walls. The bed itself rocks back and forth, and the lights flicker as if toggled on and off by unseen forces. Ben then grabs Bridger, and Jamie grabs Jackson, and all together they rush downstairs to be with Tori. The only way the Shays feel safe now is to collectively sleep in one room, and with this realization, Jamie says out loud that they have to find some kind of spiritual help. The family then tries to salvage any rest that's left through the night, despite various bangs and the ominous presence that seemed to bear down upon them all. In the days to come, the family contacts the Central Arkansas Society for Paranormal Research. The group agrees to come to the house as soon as Tori is well enough to be moved. And within the next several weeks, the day finally comes. After getting the children a sitter for the night, the Sheas are then greeted by the paranormal team. It takes some time, but they quickly set up their equipment and prepare for the night to come. The group includes a family, Alan Lowe, whose primary goal is gathering physical evidence, alongside his wife Angela and daughter Violet, who are both sensitive to the supernatural. The presence within the home makes almost an immediate impression upon Angela and Violet. In later interviews, Violet would say that, "I felt a heavy and depressing vibe almost immediately." Within the group is another woman by the name of Karen Schillings. Her job is to try and connect the paranormal happenings with historical factors, such as the house's history. Through her research, she's able to determine that the home itself was built in the year 1780 and was once a stagecoach and hotel. It then later became a jail. As part of the group's routine, Angela and Violet begin a walkthrough of the home to see if they can sense any entities that could perhaps be lurking inside. Going room to room, the two sense the same dark and depressive energy. They also start sensing the spirit of a small child who's too scared to approach them. They then also pick up on not one, but many entities. It's as if a sea of spirits surround them, and they are not happy in the slightest. As the two continue to explore, they would pick up on something else. Amidst the sea, they begin to sense a dark and foreboding presence that seemed to permeate the air around them, something that wasn't human and perhaps never was. As Angela would describe in her later interviews, "I hadn't been scared of a spirit since I was a small child, but this one truly scared me." While walking, the two simultaneously see a brief apparition of the creature. Its skin is dry and dead, its eyes hollow and soulless. It's as if it thrived on pain and misery. This thing, whatever it was, had never experienced a singular breath of humanity. As they finish their walkthrough, the mother and daughter then head back down to the base level of the home to tell the Sheas what they had discovered and felt. They tell them that they believed a small boy was present within the house, as well as a multitude of other human spirits. They believed that these were the ones frequently speaking and were responsible for keeping their son up late at night. They then informed them of the very dark energy that they had felt and seen. The two were unsure of exactly just what the creature was, but asked for the family's permission to try and attempt to contact it via a Ouija board. The Sheas reluctantly agree, and soon the team lays out the board within the dining room of the house. Ben, who is unsure about the Ouija board method, is in control of the planchette alongside Alan. The group then begins to ask questions as they attempt to speak with the negative entity. Upon asking for its name, the planchette begins to move. It then, letter by letter, spells out S-E-T-H. When asked when it was alive, the planchette again, letter by letter, spells out the word never. The answers seem to confirm everyone's worst fears. They believed that they had been dealing with a demon. Then, the planchette, without any assistance from Alan or Ben, starts moving erratically across the board, to everyone's shock and horror. It then flies off the board and towards the crew's cameras. Feeling like this was a sign, the group then reviews the footage, and to further horror, everyone sees the grotesque figure on the monitor as it floats eerily down the hallway and then dissipates into nothingness. Asking the Sheas just what could have perhaps summoned a demon into their home, they are at first at a loss for words. However, Ben and Jamie quickly remember that when they had first seen the house, there had been strange symbols and pentagrams within its walls. Could this have perhaps been the cause? The group concludes that, even if it was some teens experimenting with the occult, as first thought, that they still could have opened up a gateway or a portal to the other side and allowed this entity to come in and infest. Angela believed that the family was in imminent danger, and if something wasn't done immediately, that this demon could inflict very real harm upon them, as shown with the potential tie to the previous car accident. She then suggests a ritual cleansing of the house. Almost as soon as the words leave her mouth, the planchette begins to violently move in a figure 8 motion, whipping back and forth with rage. Then, in a ritualistic fashion, Angela begins to burn sage within the home, attempting to cleanse it of any and all negative forces. As the smoke and prayers fill the air, the windows open and close by themselves. The lights flicker, and almost everything it seems like within the home begins to move and shake with energy. Violet sees visions of all the souls that appear to be within the house itself, or bound to the land. She now believes that the entity set was perhaps drawn to their energy and has been feeding upon it as a source, as well as the turmoil being caused to the Shea family. Following the saging, the raging atmosphere continues like a storm. Angela and her daughter then make their way outside and begin pouring a ring of blessed salt around the property, creating a barrier to protect the home and all who dwell within it. With the circle connected around the home, almost the minute the granules meet one another, the movement within ceases. In her later interviews, Jamie would say this in regards to this very night. After the cleansing, I felt an immediate change. Instead of feeling a sense of evil, I felt a sense of peace in the air. I felt that the sense of evil had been lifted. Following these night's events, the next several months, life for the Sheas returns to normal. Tori makes a full recovery, and the family seems relatively happy, all things considered. That was until one very strange evening. As Ben and Jamie discuss things they needed to take care of, their son Bridger walks into the room. However, something seems very off about the young boy. He's just standing there and staring at them, almost in a trance-like state. He then opens his mouth and begins to speak, but what comes through him is not his own voice. Instead, a dark, raspy, and menacing tone comes through, a half-laughing, half-wicked sound that deeply disturbs his parents. Jamie runs up and gives him a small shake, trying to get her son to come too, and thankfully, he does. However, he doesn't remember wandering into their room at all. Freaking out as anyone would, Jamie then asks her son to stay with his father as she quickly runs to grab baby Jackson. Upon picking him up out of his crib, she begins to hear 2 very distinct voices floating around her. They seem to be getting louder and louder as she makes her way back towards the bedroom door. Headed out of the room and into the hallway, she then finds a scared-looking Tori standing before her. As she asks her to quickly come with her, Tori points to the end of the hallway behind them. There, mere feet away, it's large and robed, with the same cracked skin and glassy black pits for eyes. Screaming and grabbing her daughter as well, Jamie then runs them all down the stairs and back towards Ben and Bridger. These series of events left the Sheas with seemingly no other choice. Out of fear for their lives, they would jump into the family minivan and leave behind what was once their dream home. As a result of this, they would quietly put their home up on the market and move to a nearby apartment. Ben would graduate school in the months to come, and upon the sale of the house, the couple would take the money and move to a brand new town where they started life anew. Before we go, I wanted to share my thoughts on this case and some of the details that I noticed. The whole ordeal, contrary to what most typically occurs, seemed to make the Sheas a much stronger family unit instead of tearing them apart, which is always a positive thing to see come out of these hauntings. From what I could find, it seems that the Sheas are still thriving, and thank God for that, given all that they've been through. This case strikes me as more genuine compared to many others that I've seen. I've drawn those conclusions not only from the Sheas' actions throughout their story, but from listening to interviews years after. They seem like very credible and decent people, to me at least. Did a portal exist within the Shea home? I certainly think that it's possible, considering they found occult-related symbolism and other ritual items within the home before they even officially lived there. It's hard to tell if it was some kids playing around or something more methodical. Regardless, a door could have been opened, inadvertently or otherwise, allowing these entities to come in and wreak havoc upon lives. Upon having the paranormal research group come in and attempt to communicate with the dark entity within the home, it's interesting that the name that came out of the Ouija board session was Seth or Set. Interestingly, those names are the same names for the Egyptian god of chaos. This figure is also known as a trickster figure at times. Could the entity and the god be one and the same? I mean, it's certainly possible, albeit unlikely in my opinion, but I found this element pretty interesting, and I needed to share it with you all. They also mentioned that the planchette on the Ouija board moved in a figure 8 pattern. This is also very interesting because it's also a characteristic of the demon Zozo. I think this is the first case outside of that original story and the first-hand accounts of interactions with said demon that I've heard of this phenomena manifesting. And I do have to say, all seriousness aside, this case is covered on one of my all-time favorite shows, which is called A Haunting. And I went back and rewatched the episode that features the story, which is called Where Evil Lurks. And dude, the acting, the parts that feature the creature's portrayal on the show are absolutely hilarious. Like, what even is that? Like, come on, guys, you could have done better. Albeit, I always enjoy the show and the stories being told. That part was just way too funny for me not to mention. Now, saging is a very ancient and useful practice. I've seen it work with my own eyes in one of the most disturbing and violent hauntings that I've ever experienced. And it literally forced the entity outside, where it then proceeded to bang on the walls and windows, and occasionally the floor and ceiling. It's a whole saga of a story. If you guys aren't familiar with it, maybe I'll go into it more so here another day. But that convinced me that saging can very much work. The particular cleansing ritual that was used in this case combined saging with Christian prayer, which I'm sure could be effective. However, if the portal was left open, which I think it was, the entity just made its way back into the home, and or another or multiple other entities made their way back in, because the Sheas continue to be haunted, and it was that ultimately led to them leaving. I also can't judge them for selling the house as it was. They tried to handle things the best way that they knew how, and I hope whoever ended up with it after and up to present day were able to get things more spiritually calmed down, so to speak, and weren't nearly as haunted and plagued as the Sheas were. I hope wherever the Shea family is today that they're happy, safe, and thriving. And I always mention this just to be on the safe side. Please respect their privacy and anyone else's privacy of stories that we've covered here. With that being said, unfortunately, sometimes when we think we've found our happily ever after, it ends up being nothing more than a trap, a lurid false sense of security that when our guard is finally down, the monster within the darkness strikes like a viper from the shadows, So be wary and take precautions, and don't let this be you. Thank you all so very much for watching this brand new episode. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, hype it if you can, and share this video around. Comment below letting me know your thoughts on the case as a whole or how you felt about the story. I also mention these because, well, they're important, and that is that you can further support my work by subscribing over at patreon.com/mysteryarchives. There you can gain access to all my content ad-free and much more. You can also directly support me, and I'll directly mail you a signed copy of any of my 4 books and or official merchandise from my store, which I operate myself. And you can order those items at mysteryarchives.myshopify.com. Other than that, guys, I appreciate you as always supporting me through the ups and downs of life. It certainly can and has been a roller coaster, and I just want you to know how thankful and grateful I am for you guys always having my back. So truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all. As always, this has been Cody here at Mystery Archives. Please stay safe out there from demonic entities, inflation, AI, and so many other things that plague our world. Take care. I'll see you next time.